Okay, let's dive into this. Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're unpacking a really heavy but honestly incredibly powerful topic from Stephan Kreuk's book, The Living Signature of God. We're zooming in specifically on Chapter 15, which tackles that deeply emotional and frankly exhausting process of trying to break our most ingrained habits. If you have ever felt totally trapped by a pattern you just can't seem to shake, and you're just so tired of the constant guilt, well, you're exactly where you need to be today. We're going to completely map out the architecture of your transformation.
So I want you to really let this question sink in. What if a relapse is actually not a failure? Usually when we fall back into an old habit, right, we are instantly crushed by this massive weight of guilt and shame. Our inner critic just screams at us, telling us that all our hard work was for literally nothing and we're right back at square one. But what if we completely flip the script on that? What if that moment of stumbling isn't a defeat at all, but rather it's just a crucial piece of data on your journey to freedom? To get there, we really need to approach this with deep compassion and absolutely zero judgment.
You see, it really comes down to a stark contrast between two internal narratives. Let's call them the old voice and the new voice. The old voice is essentially an accuser. It demands absolute perfection. It induces this intense guilt the exact second you slip up, and it forces you into a state of exhausting overcompensation. Trying to be absolutely perfect just to prove you deserve to exist. It literally uses regret to steal your energy. But then you have the new voice, and this completely changes the game. It focuses on grace. It measures your success by the growing intervals of time between your relapses. And most importantly, it looks for the diminished intensity of that old habit. It's all about actual, sustainable growth.
All right, moving into Section 1, the core concept, which is all about the whisper of less. We're about to completely reframe how we view our moments of weakness.
So the crucial point is understanding exactly what this means. The whisper of less is that subtle, kind of creeping realization that when you slide back into an old pattern, it just doesn't feel the same anymore. It's lost its magic. The kick or the rush you used to get is noticeably weaker. Now that old voice wants you to completely ignore this and only focus on the fact that you quote-unquote failed. But the truth, this reduced satisfaction is profound proof that your inner self is actually healing. Your brain is quite literally forming new neural pathways, and your mind is becoming less responsive to those old temptations.
The source material has this absolutely incredible quote that sums it up perfectly. True victory lies not in the absence of temptation, but in the discovery that its taste is fading more and more. I mean, doesn't that just validate the struggle so much? It completely takes the pressure off. Growth isn't about achieving some state of flawless perfection where you're just magically never tempted again. True growth is discovering that the things that used to hold you captive, they just don't taste as good anymore. The melody of that old song is finally fading.
Which brings us to Section 2, Case Study, Jasper's Journey. Let's look at some highly relatable, tangible proof of how the whisper of less plays out in real life.
Walk with me through Jasper's timeline here because it's fascinating. On April 28th, he felt the urge, but consciously resisted it. He pushed the interval out further. By May 14th, the temptation hit him harder than ever while he was home alone, but he actively trusted his new voice. He realized that overcoming temptation is literally like training a muscle. It builds your willpower over time. Then, on May 30th, during a long bus ride, he faced a massive trigger. But he recognized that his old habit was really just a way to temporarily numb his fear. By shifting his focus, he broke that cycle. He was building new mental pathways. But then, we get to June 5th.
On June 5th, Jasper actually had a relapse. But look at what happened next. The dopamine hit, that feeling of reward, was incredibly weak. He acknowledged it, saying, essentially, I did it anyway, but the feeling was weak. I just have much less need for it. Because the intensity of the habit was drastically reduced, his regret was surprisingly brief. Instead of spiraling down into a pit of shame, his focus shifted almost instantly to the realization that he was winning. The interval between relapses had grown, and the taste of the habit had faded. That right there is the whisper of less in action. It was a confirmation of his progress, not a condemnation.
Let's move to Section 3, Practical Application, Intervals and Small Doors. This is where we turn Jasper's story into actionable advice for you. And this brilliantly illustrates how you can actually apply this to your own life today. We have 3 practical steps. First, perform the less intense check. If you fall back into an old pattern, pause right then and there. Ask yourself, did this actually feel as intense as it used to? Was it genuinely satisfying? Second, start a dopamine journal. Document the date, the context, and most importantly, compare the intensity of the urge versus how weak the satisfaction actually was. Writing it down creates hard proof of your victory. And third, close the small doors. You have to be hyper alert to those innocent-seeming habits, like, endlessly scrolling on your phone just to delay a task, because those hidden triggers are often the quiet gateways right back into your main destructive patterns.
All right, Section 4, Spiritual Anchoring and Biblical Liberation. Let's look at the spiritual foundation that grounds this entire transformation.
Take a look at this. And you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. This powerful verse from John chapter 8, verse 32 is a profound reminder that the guilt and the shame coming from that old voice, it's fundamentally a lie. When that old voice whispers that you're an absolute failure just because you stumbled, it is lying to your face. Recognizing the actual truth, the truth that your desires are fading and that you are genuinely healing, that is what truly sets you free from the prison of your own mind.
And then there's this incredibly beautiful reassurance from 2 Corinthians 12:9. My grace is sufficient for you, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. This is just pure, profound compassion. God's grace meets you exactly where you are, right in your moments of weakness and relapse. Your human struggles aren't a barrier to God's love. In fact, they are the exact place where His divine power becomes perfect in your life. You don't have to endlessly overcompensate. You just have to accept the grace.
Which brings us to our final part, Section 5, Your New Freedom. We're summarizing that shift from a prison of shame to a life of grace-filled growth.
I want you to firmly internalize this empowering affirmation. Say it to yourself. I am an imperfect human, loved by God. I am constantly growing. That is your new reality. You are a new creation. You absolutely do not have to be flawless to be worthy of love. A relapse is not a dead end. It's simply a moment of new insight on a continuous, lifelong path of growth. You are held safely, and your progress is very, very real.
So, as we wrap up, I want to leave you with this provocative thought to chew on. Which whisper of less will you use today to prove to yourself that you are healing? The next time you face temptation, or even if you happen to stumble, I challenge you to listen closely. Listen for that faded melody. Listen for the diminished satisfaction. Recognize that you are changing from the inside out, and let that truth set you free. Thanks for hanging out with me in this explainer, and remember, keep celebrating those growing intervals.